Good morning, Metalheads here. Welcome to a new episode of the Metal Meltdown. And today, we're looking at the new album from Periphery entitled Periphery 4, Hail Stan. Quick side note, who the fuck is Stan? Like, okay, I get it. It's supposed to be a play on Hail Satan, obviously. But there's a small part of me that's just wondering who Stan is. I don't know. Maybe I'm just going fucking crazy because it's like 2 o'clock in the morning where I am right now. I want to make it clear I'm not up till 2 a.m. because of this album. I'm up till 2 a.m. because I have no fucking life. But that's good news for you guys, I guess, because that means we get to talk about all this brand new album from Periphery. Their first since leaving Sumerian Records to form their own label, if I'm not mistaken. I'm pretty sure 3 Dot Recordings is their own. A very interesting move, considering Periphery was one of Sumerian's biggest bands. I mean, they arguably coined the term Sumerian core. There's so many bands that would not be around had it not been for the partnership between Periphery and Sumerian. However, there is some genuinely good news coupled with this, as it seems as though the band's break from Sumerian gave them all the time they needed in the world to craft this new album, and it has turned out for the better. I've never been a gigantic fan of previous Periphery records. I think I reviewed Select Difficulty on here. The fact that I don't even remember doesn't say a lot. I've just never personally found them very interesting. To be fair, I've never been a huge fan of the whole gent sound. But if we can bring this full circle and backtrack to what I was saying before, turns out all this band needed was just more time to write and arrange and produce a fucking record. It's so simple, yet I would have never thought of it, to be fully honest with you. That's right, Periphery have spent the last year working meticulously on this record, and it immediately shows. The arrangements are more diverse, they're more solid, they're more engaging, and they're just generally more interesting. They sound more enthusiastic, they sound stronger, more tight-knit as a unit, and they also, they're a little more bold and courageous, all things considered as well. Which isn't to say that there's a massive departure in the sound, there's not a lot of huge dynamic changes, but the band certainly is a little bit more bold in how they present themselves. I mean, for fuck's sakes, the album opens with a 16-minute cut entitled Reptile, which, may I add, one of the best things I think Periphery have ever recorded. Does it need to be 16 minutes? No, not necessarily, but it does have some incredible vocals, some incredibly dynamic guitar pieces all throughout. And honestly, it's so strong on its own that you could have just released the whole thing as its own individual EP cut up into little parts. It is an extremely solid piece of music. Church Burner is another favorite. This song straight up is like an all-you-can-eat metal riff buffet. There's just so many great licks here, all compacted into a tight little package. It's sporadic and funky and crazy heavy, and at one point in the song, all these things kind of combine together into something that kind of feels lifted from Ironworks era Dillinger Escape Plan. And there are some other great riff fests in the forms of songs like Blood Eagle and Follow Your Ghost, the former of which has some great thick metallic hearty grooves, the latter of which kind of dips its toes into the deathcore realm for some really punishing heavy sections. Even though I've never been a gigantic fan of Periphery, I've always been a fan of Misha's guitar work. He's just a really talented guy, and he really gets to flex his muscles on these songs. He displays a lot of really great guitar chops, chops that he always had. It's more evident here because the songs are better written. And it's not just him. Spencer Sotolo has clearly evolved as a vocalist in the last time we've seen him. He sounds way more confident on here than he has on any other Periphery album, period. Like, these guys have clearly used their time in the last year very, very, very fucking wisely, fine-tuning all the rough details of their sound, meticulously crafting these songs, and pushing each other and becoming more confident in all of their respective roles. Just that all right there would probably make for a really great album. But that's not all. It's also clear that Periphery has taken some time in the last year to expand beyond their horizons, more so than on any other record. Take, for instance, Crush, which is very synth-heavy and has a weird synth-pop industrial kind of swagger to it. Or a song like It's Only Smiles, which I can already tell is going to be a favorite for a lot of people moving forward, given its atmosphere, given how haunting and brooding it is, while not compromising any real beauty, any charm. These ideas aren't necessarily alien to Periphery, but they're just different enough to show a different side of them, as well as to enhance the flow of this record and just give it some spice, some extra flavor. Which does bring me to one of my few criticisms of the record, is that despite the fact that it shows Periphery expanding a little bit and displaying a lot of freedom and creativity and skill, it is still ultimately a Periphery album. All the albums and problems that I've had with them in the past pretty much remain, as well as the cliches and the tropes that have prevented me from really enjoying their sound. Every once in a while, they'll still play a really lame open tab breakdown kind of riff and follow it up with some super flashy nonsense, the kind of shit that gent bands all did in their prime. I don't know why Periphery feels the need to do this stuff, considering that they're clearly capable of writing stronger, more progressive stuff, but whatever. A lot of people still seem to like that, I guess. And I generally don't think it's a good sign when you talk about a progressive metal album and you say the only thing that surprised me was that the songwriting was actually really good this time around. Like, don't get me wrong, songs like Church Burner and Crush are great distractions and they show Periphery branching out, but they don't show them branching out just enough for me personally. It still fits very nicely within the wheelhouse of Periphery. Maybe fans will feel differently, I don't personally know. I won't speak on their behalf. I can only speak on mine. And then there's finally the fact that this record is 63 minutes long and just did not need to be. I like Reptile, don't get me wrong, but I want to make it clear I was only half joking when I said that this maybe should have been its own thing. I think this should have been its own thing. It's too long and it does kind of bog down the record. As enjoyable and fiery as it is, it just makes the entire album too long. Despite all that, I really enjoyed this record. I mean, sure, it didn't blow my fucking mind or anything, but it did show me, for probably the first time in Periphery's career, that they are actually capable of some really good songwriting if you just give them the time and space. I think this is one of their most dynamic album. I think it's their most expansive album, even if subtly so. I think it's their best performed and arranged record. It just frankly needs a little more time in the crock pot, needs a little more seasoning. You know, some of the fat needs to be trimmed, but, you know, it's still a pretty damn good record. And with that in mind, I'll give this thing a 3.5 out of 5. If you're a longtime Periphery fan, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't like this album. I think maybe a song like Crush might be a little bit too much for the true gent fans out there, but I personally really enjoyed it, and I don't really see it being a deal breaker, all things considered. If you're new to Periphery, definitely check this out. I certainly think it's their strongest record yet. I'm very curious to see what Periphery continues to do in the future, now that they're completely free and can do what they want. Like, this feels like the stepping stone to a great record, you know what I mean? Like, Kill 'Em All, not the greatest record ever, but that was the stepping stone to Ride the Lightning. That's how I feel about this. I think this album is going to be the band's Kill 'Em All, and the next record could end up being their Ride the Lightning. It could be the stepping stone to something really great. So, believe it or not, I will be keeping a good close eye on them. Who knows, maybe if I found this on vinyl, I would maybe pick it up. Maybe. We'll see. So, 3.5 out of 5, a surprisingly solid all-around album from Periphery, and for the first time, maybe ever, I'm genuinely curious to see what the band does next. And that is it for the Metal Meltdown. I'm not an expert, nor do I claim to be, so what do you think? Do you like this record? Do you not like this record? And what do you want to hear from me next? Thank you for watching. Make sure you press subscribe so you get updates on the Metal Meltdown fucking immediately, and you have yourself a fantastic fucking day.